the rain, because we're not going to let a little rain stop us. I'm Elena from We Are Women organization. I need to give a big shout out to one of our members that couldn't be here, Jenny Siri. She does all of our graphics, and she's like an engine that drives the internet engine. Thank you, Jenny Siri. And I'm just came out to actually introduce Terry O'Neill, president of NOW, a woman who definitely walks the walk when she talks the talk. And I don't want to spend too much time going on and on, so without further ado, Terry O'Neill.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you all so much for being here in this horrible weather. We are creating a new wave of activism, and we will not be silenced. We will not shut down. We are going to win this fight. We need an equal rights amendment because every woman has the right to have the children she wants and raise the children she has. And in order to do that, she needs the economic and social and political power that we do not have yet. But with an ERA, we can start to get there, and we're going to start there and get there as sooner rather than later. I know I'm getting rain on here. So if we had an ERA, make no mistake, the United States Supreme Court would not be able to impose their religious views on the rest of us. When the Supreme Court said in the Hobby Lobby decision that they cared more about the religious sensibilities of men who run corporations, they said to women, you don't count. But if we had an ERA, the Supreme Court would not have been able to decide the Hobby Lobby decision the way they did. If we had an ERA, the Supreme Court would not be able to say to women trying to access abortion care at clinics throughout the country, the Supreme Court said in the buffer zone case, you can't have a 35-foot buffer zone to protect you from violent protesters. And yet, Mr. Chief Justice Roberts insists on having his own 100-foot buffer zone around the Supreme Court building. If we had an ERA, that buffer zone case could not have been decided the way it was. We are going to get there. We're going to win this fight. If we had an ERA, women would be able to file suit in federal court to hold their abusers accountable under the law. Today, as we know, in far too many jurisdictions, New Jersey is one, but many other jurisdictions are on the line. There are too many times when abusers get off the hook because they've got great legal representation and their victim does not. That's not okay. If we had an ERA, we would have stronger laws to protect women from domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. We will win this fight because our lives are on the line. If we had an ERA, you would not see that gender gap last very much longer. Right now, women are still at 77 cents to the dollar paid to men, but for African American women, it's more like 64 cents, and for Latinas, it's 59 cents. How are you going to save for your retirement on 59 cents to the dollar? It can't be done. When we get the ERA, it will be for all women. It will be for our lesbian and transgender sisters. It will be for women who don't want to experience an unexpected pregnancy. It will be for women who need to terminate their pregnancies. It will be for women and nurture their children and have the resources to do that. We will have an ERA for all the women when we get there, my sisters and my brothers. Because the women will not be divided against the men in this fight for the ERA. Thank you all for being here. We will get there. Let's go.
Sorry about that. Umbrellas can be pesky at times.
All right, our next speaker is an activist and writer on women's issues. Let me hear it for Soraya Shamali.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here in the rain and the slightly cold. I am a freelance writer. I'm not affiliated with any of the large, remarkable institutions, big and small, that are doing all of this work. So I really wanted to... Sorry. Thank you. So I really wanted to connect what people can do in their everyday lives with the amazing work that is being done to move things in institutions. And one thing that strikes me about today is that there are a lot of people here, men and women, but mainly women, who are not afraid to use their voices. And that's important, but it's not really a matter of letting people hear our voices, because we have all kinds of traditions and cultures and norms that actively work to suppress women's voices and in the end to suppress our free speech. There's a great cartoon that shows 7 or 8 people at a table. One's a woman, the rest are men, and the caption reads, "Thank you so much, Mrs. Triggs, for your suggestion. Maybe one of the men would like to make it." And that is the problem that we have, right? So we don't have only sex segregation in terms of ideas about education, but we have sex segregation in the media. We have sex segregation in politics. We have sex segregation everywhere. And it's not just a matter of women finding a place at the table, because having a place at the table is not the same as having a voice when you're at the table. And so if you think about the way our politeness norms work, we teach little girls very different rules about how to use their voices than we teach little boys. Parents interrupt girls twice as often as they interrupt boys. That sends a very specific message about the value of people's words. In addition, for those of us who are involved in faith communities, in religious institutions, the ritual silencing of women that is the common dominant practice in mainstream religion has a spillover effect into every other aspect of our lives. Personally, I will not participate in religious institutions where women cannot be held to authority, who cannot be in ministerial positions. It's not a lesson that I particularly want to impart to young people. So I'm urging you to take your voice, use your strength, use your passion, but use it for the sexist at the dinner table. Use it for the sexist in your schools. And those people may be friends, they may be people who are using, completely unconscious traditions and customs and habits to enforce implicit biases that end up in our lack of representation in government, in media, and in the institutions that govern our lives. So I have 10 words that I wrote about earlier this year that seem to resonate very widely with people. And it was actually something that was translated in several different languages, which really brings home the fact that we are not alone in our struggles, right? And the 10 words are: no explanation necessary. I've said what I know I have expertise in. I do not need, usually a man, to re-explain to me what I've just said, right? And there's a term of art for that called mansplaining. I don't know if anybody we've all experienced it. So no explanation needed. And another one is, please stop interrupting me, because women are interrupted sometimes in spaces, public spaces, up to 4 times as often as men. So even if we have important things to say, we are not actually able to complete those thoughts in public and say those things. And the last thing is, I just said that. Right? How many times do we sit in a space, particularly in public spaces, and we say these important things that you've heard today, only to have them repeated back as though you never said them at all? So I think it's important to use your voice, but to make sure that other people are hearing you and to hold them accountable for listening to what you're saying instead of being polite and just letting it slide. So thank you so much for being here today, and I urge you all to use those voices effectively.
That's handy. Where did you get that little thing?
I got it on Amazon.
Ah. Homemade.
That's right.
Over the past 40-plus years, Alice Cohan has been the backbone of the women's movement. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us today, but we know she's watching. Alice is driven by a passion that is seeped deep within her. Although she almost never asks for recognition or the limelight, she is always there. Her reach goes far beyond her own work, but has continued and will continue through the women she has touched with her mentorship. There's truly no one who could ever replace what she means to those who know her personally. To those that don't know Alice, be assured that her work fighting for the rights of women, organizing rallies, and standing up for justice has touched you in some way and will continue to do so. We are humbled and grateful for her continued work on behalf of all women.
Alice Cohan was the first field organizer for the drive in the 70s and has stayed at it ever since. Right now she's sick, but she'll be back. She was the march director for 2004. She's been the march director for so many of the big marches that you've seen. But I can tell you, there's nobody more passionate. And even sick right now, she was on the phone for the ERA Coalition meeting. So she's here, and if she's watching, Alice, come back. We'll be back, because we're going to see it, and we're going to go over the top. Thank you very much.
I have an idea about who I want to interview.
Our next speaker is the founder of Serve Justice and a survivor of campus sexual violence.
Talking to her later.
Help me welcome Laura Dunn.
So who here cares about women? You can do better than that. Who here cares about women? And who cares about ending violence against women? Of all the reasons to support the ERA, none is more pressing to me than ending violence against women. I myself am a survivor of campus sexual violence, and I have taken my fight from my campus to the Department of Education, to the halls of Congress, and most recently to the White House. We as victims are being heard like never before, but we do not have justice yet because there is no protection under the law. There is nothing keeping perpetrators accountable in our Constitution, and that is what the ERA will be. As some of you know, this week is the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act. The most powerful part of that act was stripped by our own Supreme Court. They took out the civil rights-based cause of action so that women like me can hold perpetrators and enablers accountable for the crimes that commit against us. Why did they take that out? It was unconstitutional. There was no basis in our own Constitution to protect women. How shameful. How shameful is that? The international community even recognizes that violence against women is a basic human right. It demands that governments protect women against third-party violence. Third-party violence, not just strangers in the street, but our acquaintances, our friends, and unfortunately the men who even claim to love us are committing violence. And nothing in our Constitution protects women. This is why we need the ERA. It is the answer to the problem.
So when you fight to end violence against women, realize that we must start with equality. We must have a basis in our Constitution to get justice for survivors everywhere. Today, we may be rallying, but I hope tomorrow you will be fighting, because victims every day are fighting for justice, and we are not alone. We stand with you to pass the ERA, and I hope that you stand with us. Thank you.